The morning mist hung heavy over Windsor Castle as William stood at the tall window of his private study. His hands trembled slightly as he held the phone, listening to the doctor's words that would change everything. The diagnosis was final, and there was no turning back from what lay ahead. Kate noticed the change in her husband immediately when he returned to their breakfast table. The children were laughing over their cereal, unaware that their world was about to shift forever. William's face had gone pale, and his usual morning smile was nowhere to be found. She reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "The children don't need to know yet," William whispered, his voice barely audible. Kate nodded, understanding passing between them without words. They had learned over the years of their marriage how to communicate in silence, especially when the weight of royal duties pressed down on them. That afternoon, they walked through the gardens together, while their security team followed at a respectful distance. The autumn leaves crunched under their feet as they found their favorite bench by the old oak tree. This was where they came when they needed to talk about things too heavy for palace walls. "How long do we have?" Kate asked, her voice steady despite the tears forming in her eyes. William looked down at his hands, the same hands that had waved to thousands of people, signed countless documents, and held his children when they were born. 6 months, maybe 8 if we're lucky, he replied. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. They both knew what this meant for their family, for the monarchy, and for the millions of people who looked up to them. Kate leaned against William's shoulder, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. They had faced many challenges together, but nothing like this. The public would need to know eventually, but for now it was their secret to carry. The silence between them was filled with 20 years of shared memories, from their university days to their wedding, to the birth of their children. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them as they sat together, two people facing the unthinkable. The setting sun painted the sky in soft orange and pink colors, creating a peaceful backdrop for their private moment of grief. Neither spoke about what would come next. They simply held each other close, drawing strength from their unbreakable bond. As darkness began to fall, they knew they would have to return to the castle and continue their daily routines. The children would need dinner, homework help, and bedtime stories. Life would go on as normal, at least for now. But something fundamental had changed between them that day, a shared knowledge that would color every moment they had left together. Walking back toward the castle, their fingers intertwined, William and Kate began the most difficult journey of their lives. They would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. The silence between them was no longer empty but filled with love, determination, and the quiet strength that had always defined their relationship. The palace staff noticed nothing different about the royal couple that evening. They attended their scheduled meetings, reviewed their upcoming engagements, and said goodnight to their children as they always did. But in the privacy of their bedroom, they held each other closer than usual, knowing that their time together had suddenly become precious beyond measure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and impossible decisions. But tonight they had each other, and that was enough. In the darkness of their room, they found comfort in the steady rhythm of each other's breathing, a reminder that they were still here, still together, still fighting. The diagnosis had changed everything, but it had also revealed something beautiful about their love. When words failed them, their silence spoke volumes. When the future became uncertain, their present moment became sacred. They would face whatever came next with the same quiet dignity that had carried them through 2 decades of public service. As William drifted off to sleep, Kate watched his peaceful face in the moonlight streaming through their window. She memorized every detail, every line, every expression. These quiet moments would sustain her in the difficult days ahead. Their love story was entering its final chapter, but it would be written with the same grace and strength that had defined their entire journey together. 3 weeks had passed since that terrible morning, and William was getting weaker each day. The royal doctors came and went quietly, using the back entrance to avoid any media attention. Kate watched her husband struggle to maintain his public appearances, his face growing thinner and his energy fading with each passing day. The children began to notice something was wrong. George asked why Daddy was sleeping so much, and Charlotte wondered why Mummy's eyes were always red. Little Louis seemed to sense the sadness in the house, clinging to his parents more than usual during their evening story time. Kate made the difficult decision to reduce their public engagements without giving a reason. The palace press office released statements about minor scheduling conflicts and personal time. The British public, unaware of the truth, continued to send letters of support and admiration for the royal family's dedication to their duties. On a quiet Tuesday morning, William collapsed in his private office while reviewing correspondence. Kate found him there 20 minutes later, unconscious on the floor beside his desk. The emergency was handled with military precision by the palace staff, but Kate knew they couldn't hide the truth much longer. Dr. Harrison, the family physician, delivered more devastating news after examining William. The progression was faster than they had hoped. What they thought would be months might only be weeks. Kate felt the ground shift beneath her feet as she processed this new reality. That evening, they made the heart-wrenching decision to tell the children. They gathered in the family sitting room, the same place where they had celebrated birthdays and Christmas mornings. William sat in his favorite chair, looking frail but determined to be strong for his family. "Daddy is very sick," Kate began, her voice carefully controlled. "The doctors are doing everything they can, but we need to spend as much time together as possible." The children listened with wide eyes, not fully understanding but sensing the gravity of the situation. George, being the eldest, asked the question that broke their hearts. "Is Daddy going to die?" The silence that followed was deafening. William reached out and pulled his son close, feeling the weight of the crown that would one day rest on George's young shoulders. "We don't know exactly what will happen," William said softly, "but we're going to make every day count. We're going to love each other and take care of each other, no matter what." Charlotte climbed onto her father's lap and Louis followed suit, creating a family huddle of love and comfort. The next few days were a blur of quiet activities and precious moments. They played board games, watched old movies, and spent hours in the garden feeding the ducks in the pond. Kate photographed everything, wanting to preserve these memories for her children and for herself. William's parents visited more frequently, though they maintained their usual reserved demeanor in public. Behind closed doors, however, the emotion was overwhelming. King Charles struggled to contain his grief while Queen Camilla provided quiet support to Kate, understanding the unique burden of being married to a future king. The palace staff began to whisper among themselves, noticing the increased security and the frequent medical visits. Some of the longtime employees who had served the family for decades found excuses to spend more time with William, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Kate found herself treasuring the smallest moments, the way William still reached for her hand during their morning tea, the gentle smile he gave her when he caught her watching him sleep, the quiet conversations they had while the children played nearby. These simple gestures became more meaningful than any grand romantic gesture. One afternoon, while the children napped, William and Kate sat in their private garden, sharing memories from their courtship. They laughed about their first date, remembered their wedding day, and talked about their hopes for their children's futures. The conversation was bittersweet, filled with love and sadness in equal measure. As the sun set that day, they made a pact. They would face whatever came next with dignity and grace. They would protect their children's innocence as long as possible, while preparing them for the reality they would have to face. Most importantly, they would continue to love each other completely without reservation, for however much time they had left. The weight of their secret grew heavier each day, but their love grew stronger. In the quiet moments between public duties and private grief, they found a deeper connection than ever before. Their silence had become a language of love that only they could understand, speaking volumes about their commitment to each other and their family. The day Kate had been dreading finally arrived. William could no longer hide his illness from the public eye. During a charity visit to a children's hospital, he had to excuse himself twice to rest, and the cameras caught every moment of his struggle. That evening, the palace communications team gathered for an emergency meeting. Kate sat at the large oak table in the palace conference room, surrounded by advisors, press secretaries, and family members. The weight of the decision ahead felt crushing. They could no longer protect their privacy, but they could still control how the truth was revealed to the world. "We need to tell our story before someone else tells it for us," said the senior press secretary. Kate nodded, knowing this was inevitable but still feeling unprepared for the media storm that would follow. William, despite his weakness, insisted on being part of the announcement. They spent hours crafting the perfect statement. Every word was carefully chosen to convey the seriousness of the situation, while maintaining the dignity expected of the royal family. Kate read and reread the draft, imagining how millions of people around the world would react to the news. The night before the announcement, William and Kate lay in bed talking quietly about their fears. They worried about how the children would handle the public attention, how the country would react, and whether they had made the right decision to go public. Their conversation was interrupted by little footsteps in the hallway. Charlotte appeared at their bedroom door, unable to sleep. She climbed into bed between her parents, and soon George and Louis joined them. The family of 5 lay together in the large bed, finding comfort in each other's presence. It would be one of the last peaceful nights they would have for a long time. The next morning brought chaos. The palace released the official statement at exactly 9 o'clock, and within minutes news networks around the world were broadcasting the heartbreaking news. The statement was simple but devastating. Their Royal Highnesses are deeply saddened to announce that the Prince of Wales has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Kate watched the news coverage from the safety of their private quarters, holding William's hand as reporters and royal experts discussed their lives on television. The outpouring of support was immediate and overwhelming. Flowers began arriving at the palace gates within hours, and messages of love poured in from every corner of the globe. The children were kept away from the television and internet, but they could sense the change in the palace atmosphere. Staff members looked at them with sad, gentle eyes, and there were more security guards than usual patrolling the grounds. Kate and William tried to maintain their normal routine, but everything felt different now that the secret was out. That afternoon, they held a brief press conference in the palace courtyard. William, looking frail but dignified in his navy suit, stood beside Kate as they faced the media together. He spoke slowly and clearly about his diagnosis, thanking the medical team and asking for privacy during this difficult time. Kate remained silent during the press conference, but her presence spoke volumes. She stood tall and strong beside her husband, her hand gently placed on his arm in a gesture of support. The cameras captured every emotion that crossed her face, and the world saw the depth of her love and pain. After the press conference, they retreated to their private apartments where the children were waiting with their nanny. The family spent the rest of the day playing quiet games and reading stories, trying to create a sense of normalcy in the midst of the storm swirling around them outside. The evening news showed crowds gathering outside the palace, some holding signs with messages of support, others simply standing in silent vigil. The mood was somber but respectful, as people processed the shocking news about their beloved royal family. International leaders began calling the palace to express their condolences and support. The Prime Minister issued a statement praising William's service to the country and offering any assistance the royal family might need. The Commonwealth nations rallied around the family, showing the deep respect and affection they had for William and Kate. That night, as they tucked their children into bed, Kate and William answered more difficult questions. George wanted to know if they would still live in the palace, and Charlotte asked if Daddy would still be able to play with them in the garden. They answered honestly but gently, preparing their children for the changes that lay ahead. Before going to sleep, William sat at his desk and wrote personal letters to each of his children. He wanted them to have something from him when they were older, something to help them understand how much he loved them and how proud he was to be their father. Kate watched him write, knowing how much strength this simple act was taking from him. The world now knew their secret, and there was no going back. The media attention would be intense and their privacy would be limited. But in some ways, Kate felt relieved. They no longer had to pretend everything was normal. They could focus entirely on loving each other and making the most of their remaining time together. 2 months after the public announcement, William's condition had deteriorated significantly. The once strong and vibrant prince now needed help walking and spent most of his days in a wheelchair. Kate rarely left his side, managing her own emotional pain while caring for her husband and trying to maintain some stability for their children. The palace had become a place of hushed whispers and gentle movements. Staff members spoke in soft tones and walked carefully through the hallways, everyone aware that they were witnessing history in the making. The normal bustle of royal life had been replaced by a reverent quiet that seemed to honor the gravity of the situation. Kate had transformed into someone she never thought she would become. The shy girl who had once been nervous about public speaking now handled media briefings with grace and strength. She coordinated medical appointments, managed the children's schedules, and somehow found time to continue some of her charitable work. Knowing that William wanted their causes to continue, the children had adapted to their new reality with the remarkable resilience of youth. They learned to be gentle with their father, understanding that he tired easily and needed more rest than before. George, now understanding more about his future role, began asking Kate questions about what it meant to be king someday. One particularly difficult evening, William called Kate to his bedside. He was having trouble breathing and looked exhausted from the effort of simply staying awake. "I need to know that you'll be okay," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Kate took his hand and squeezed it gently. "We'll be okay because you taught us how to be strong," she replied, fighting back tears. "You've given us 20 years of love, and that will carry us through whatever comes next." William smiled weakly, finding comfort in her words even as his body continued to fail him. The medical team had set up a proper sick room in their private quarters, complete with all the equipment William might need. Kate learned how to help with his medications and treatments, refusing to let strangers handle the most intimate aspects of his care. She wanted to be the one to help him, to show her love through service during his most vulnerable moments. Letters and gifts continued to pour in from around the world. Children sent drawings and poems, adults shared stories of how William and Kate had inspired them, and world leaders offered their continued support. Kate read many of these messages to William during his wakeful hours, helping him understand the profound impact he had made on so many lives. One afternoon, William asked to see the garden one last time. Kate and the medical team carefully moved him to a wheelchair and took him outside to their favorite spot by the oak tree. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves were beginning to turn brilliant shades of gold and red. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their children play on the lawn with their security detail, keeping watch from a distance. It was a perfect family moment, made more precious by its fragility. William reached for Kate's hand and she intertwined their fingers as they had done thousands of times before. "Remember when we used to dream about growing old together?" William asked, his voice filled with sadness but also gratitude. Kate nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We did grow old together," she said softly. 20 years of marriage feels like a lifetime when it's filled with this much love." That evening, the extended royal family gathered for what everyone understood might be their last dinner together. King Charles sat beside his son, finally allowing his emotions to show as he held William's hand. The Queen Consort comforted Kate, while William's brother Harry and sister-in-law participated via video call from their home abroad, sharing memories and expressing their love. The dinner was both heartbreaking and beautiful. They shared stories from William's childhood, laughed about family vacations, and talked about their hopes for the future. The children, though young, seemed to understand the importance of the evening and were remarkably well-behaved and attentive. After the family had gone home, Kate helped William get ready for bed. It was a routine they had developed over the past weeks, and though it was physically demanding for both of them, it had become a sacred time of connection. As she helped him into bed, William looked into her eyes with the same love she had seen on their wedding day. "Thank you for choosing to love me," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me the most beautiful life I could have imagined." Kate kissed his forehead gently, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. "Thank you for making me the luckiest woman in the world," she replied. They lay together in the darkness, listening to each other breathe. Kate memorized the sound of William's heartbeat, the way his hand felt in hers and the peaceful expression on his face. She knew their time was running out, but in these quiet moments, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the love they had shared. The palace around them settled into its nightly quiet, but in their room, love continued to shine bright against the approaching darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had each other, and that was everything. The final week arrived with an unexpected peace. William's pain seemed to lessen, and he found moments of clarity that allowed him to have important conversations with each of his children. Kate orchestrated these precious meetings, making sure each child had private time with their father, to say whatever was in their hearts. George, now 11 and wise beyond his years, sat by his father's bedside and talked about his fears of becoming king someday. William reassured him that he would have many years to learn and grow, and that his mother would guide him every step of the way. They talked about duty, service, and the importance of staying true to himself even under the weight of the crown. Charlotte, with her gentle spirit and artistic nature, brought her father drawings she had made of their family. Each picture showed them together, happy and whole the way she wanted to remember them forever. William treasured each drawing, asking Kate to promise they would be preserved so he could always be reminded of his daughter's beautiful view of their love. Little Louis, still too young to fully understand what was happening, spent his time with William simply being present. They read picture books together, played with toy cars, and shared quiet cuddles. William found great comfort in his youngest son's innocence and the pure love that radiated from his small presence. Kate barely slept during those final days, choosing instead to stay by William's side and soak up every remaining moment. She held his hand through the long nights, whispering stories of their life together, their hopes for their children, and her promises to carry on the work they had started as a team. The medical team prepared Kate for what was coming, explaining the signs to watch for and reassuring her that William would not be in pain. They had arranged for hospice care that would allow him to remain in the comfort of their home, surrounded by the people and things he loved most. On what would be William's last full day of consciousness, he asked Kate to help him write letters to their children for their future milestones. Together, they crafted messages for graduation days, wedding days, and the births of their own children. It was exhausting work, but William was determined to be present for his children even after he was gone. That evening, as the sun set over the palace grounds, William asked Kate to open the window so he could hear the sounds of life outside. They listened to birds singing in the gardens, children playing in the distance, and the gentle hum of London beyond the palace walls. It was the soundtrack of the world continuing to turn, beautiful and comforting in its normalcy. "I'm not afraid," William told Kate as darkness settled around them. "I'm sad to leave you, but I'm not afraid. We've loved so completely, so fully that I feel ready for whatever comes next." Kate nodded through her tears, understanding that his peace was a gift to both of them. They spent their last night together talking about their first meeting at university, their early courtship, and the moment they knew they wanted to spend their lives together. Kate reminded him of their wedding vows, especially the words "in sickness and in health," and how proud she was that they had honored those promises completely. As dawn approached, William became very tired but remained lucid. He asked Kate to gather the children so he could see them one more time. The three young royals came to their parents' bedroom in their pajamas, climbing carefully onto the bed to surround their father with love. "I want you to take care of each other," William whispered to his children, "and take care of your mother. She's the strongest person I know, and she's going to need your help." The children promised they would, not fully understanding the weight of what they were agreeing to, but sensing its importance. After the children returned to their rooms with their nanny, Kate and William spent their final hours together, in the gentle silence that had always characterized their deepest moments of connection. They didn't need words to express their love. 20 years of marriage had created a language of looks, touches, and shared breath that spoke more eloquently than any speech. As the morning sun filled their room with golden light, William's breathing became shallow and peaceful. Kate held his hand and whispered her love, watching as the man who had been her partner, her best friend, and her greatest love slowly slipped away from her. The silence that had always been their sanctuary now became the peaceful passage between life and whatever came after. In those final moments, Kate felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude rather than just grief. They had been given a rare and beautiful love, and even though it was ending, she knew it would continue to live in their children, in the work they had done together, and in the millions of lives they had touched through their service. William died as he had lived, surrounded by love and dignity, leaving behind a legacy of service and a family that would carry his memory forward with grace and strength. The world woke up to the news that would forever change the British monarchy. The official announcement came at precisely 10 o'clock in the morning. "It is with profound sorrow that we announce the death of His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, who passed away peacefully in his sleep surrounded by his beloved family." Kate sat in their bedroom for hours after William had died, holding his still warm hand and feeling the strange emptiness that comes after a long vigil finally ends. The medical team moved quietly around her, completing their necessary tasks while giving her space to begin processing her new reality as a widow and single mother to 3 young future monarchs. The children's world changed forever that morning, though they would take years to fully understand the magnitude of their loss. Kate gathered them together in the family sitting room, the same place where they had celebrated countless happy moments, to tell them that their father had died during the night. Their tears were immediate and heartbreaking, but they clung to each other with the instinctive knowledge that they would need to be strong together. Within hours, the palace gates were covered with flowers, cards and tributes from people around the world. The queue of mourners stretched for miles, with people waiting patiently for their turn to pay respects to a man who had dedicated his life to serving others. The outpouring of grief was overwhelming, but it also provided comfort to Kate and the children, showing them how deeply William had been loved. King Charles, now faced with the loss of his eldest son and heir, handled the constitutional changes with dignified efficiency, while struggling with his personal grief. George, at 11 years old, was now second in line to the throne, a responsibility that seemed impossibly heavy for such young shoulders. Kate watched her eldest son try to understand his new position while still mourning his father. The funeral planning became Kate's anchor during those first difficult days. She threw herself into organizing a ceremony that would honor William's life and service while providing closure for a nation in mourning. Every detail mattered, from the music to the flowers to the guest list that would include world leaders, charity representatives, and ordinary people whose lives William had touched. The state funeral was held at Westminster Abbey, the same place where Kate and William had pledged their love 20 years earlier. Kate walked behind William's coffin with their 3 children, showing the world the quiet strength that had defined her throughout their marriage. She wore black but carried herself with the dignity of a woman who had been deeply loved and who had loved completely in return. George, Charlotte, and Louis stood beside their mother during the service, their small faces serious as they listened to tributes to their father from world leaders, charity workers, and family friends. The sight of the 3 young royals saying goodbye to their father moved the entire world, reminding everyone of the personal cost of public service. In her only public statement after the funeral,
Kate thanked the people of Britain and the Commonwealth for their love and support.
She spoke about William's dedication to his duties and his deep love for his family, promising that his work would continue through their children and through the causes they had championed together. The months that followed were a delicate balance of public duty and private grief. Kate gradually resumed her royal engagements, now carrying the additional responsibility of preparing George for his future role while helping all 3 children process their loss. She discovered reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, drawing on the lessons William had taught her about grace under pressure. The children adapted to their new life with the remarkable resilience of youth. But Kate could see how much they missed their father. Charlotte would sometimes sit in William's favorite chair, and Louis continued to set a place for Daddy at the dinner table. George began asking serious questions about kingship, showing maturity that broke Kate's heart even as it made her proud. A year after William's death, Kate established a foundation in his memory, focusing on the causes that had been closest to his heart. The work gave her purpose and a way to honor her husband's legacy, while providing a positive focus for their children. Seeing their father's work continue helped the young royals understand that love doesn't end with death, but transforms into something that can help others. On quiet evenings, Kate would take the children to the garden bench where she and William had shared so many important conversations. They would sit together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset and feeling connected to the man who had taught them all about love, duty, and the importance of family. These moments of peace became sacred to them, a time when William's presence felt especially close. The love story of William and Kate didn't end with his death. It evolved into something deeper and more enduring, through their children, through their charitable work, and through the example they had set of how to love completely even in the face of loss. Their partnership continued to inspire people around the world. Kate had learned that true love doesn't disappear when someone dies. It becomes part of who you are forever. In the silence of their garden, surrounded by her children and memories of her beloved husband, Kate found peace. The greatest love stories don't always have happy endings, but the best ones leave behind a legacy of strength, compassion, and hope that continues long after the final page is written. Their story had become one of those rare and beautiful tales that would inspire generations to come.